our promotion, and this is where we have the ability to generate the news from the transportation office, positive news. So I want to go into that here a little bit, and I think then Pete, we're going to get back into a couple scenarios. Is that all right? You're muted, but I think you said that's right. So just some of the things I want to talk about to hit before we go into is when parents in the media are used to calling you and you are not the designated spokesperson. I think we've hit on this in some of the scenarios we just did. If someone else is taking the lead or disseminating that information, you can talk about how you don't have it, but here's another way you can help, or here's who you should call. This would be in situations where maybe you do have a designated district spokesperson. Now, when an incident has occurred and you're the spokesperson, one of the things too that's the great about social media now and the digital media is you can keep people up to date. And probably seeing this, districts on their social media channels, if there's a situation, they're going to keep people, not just the media, but members of the community up to date, parents and everyone else, what's going on social media. So that's another way that you can tell them, please keep checking the communication hub, the district's hub, for the latest updates, and you work to get the information out that way. You want to assure that you will keep the primary communication method updated and do it. So if you're going to be getting the information out this way, continue to do that, because the media relies on that, on tweets, whether it be tweets or on Facebook. I know Twitter is a great thing to use to get information out. We do it at OSBA as well for our workshops and any information we get out about certain things that are going on. When an incident has occurred and you are the spokesman, you might want to assign, this is a good tip, you might want to assign a helper for crisis situations, if that's possible, who can update the communication hub in real time. That way you can keep that personal connection going with either parents or answering their questions, or you can focus on the media. So I want to talk about some of the things that you should think about to get your positive message into the media. For the best chance, you want to get to know the producers and reporters, the editors, and the assignment editors that work at television stations, and they all work different shifts. You would be, if you have a TV station in your market, please call, get to know these people. It's very important. Reporters, they're generally assigned to work that same shift. So you need to get to know your education reporters. I know newsrooms are small, but in most newspapers, there is someone who's dedicated to work with school districts. So get to know that person. And when I say get to know, it's build a relationship with this person. Talk to them a lot. Don't just call them once a month. Actually meet them face to face, get to know them, invite them out for coffee. You can even, that is a chance where you can sit down with that person and talk about story ideas, positive things that you think they would want to cover. This is just some kind of inside baseball that you might want to think about when you're looking to get your message out. Determining daily special report assignments, the TV staff and radio staff. Typically at a news station, they're going to meet in the morning and the afternoon. So that explains why you're getting calls from reporters like at 4 p.m. It's just, they'll meet in the afternoon and get a story idea, and they'll want the information like right now. So that's why you're going to get that call. But typically that's when these meetings take place. And when they have these meetings, they sit around and they brainstorm or talk about what are the stories of the day? What are people talking about? We want to talk about stories. In a newspaper, you're generally going to have one meeting per day, but I would say nowadays with the limited staff that newspapers have, they're probably not having many meetings at all. And I would say the reporter and not the editor is driving the news content of newspapers today because they are so short staffed. So basically, they're determining what's getting covered in newspapers on these beats. It's often mandatories that reporters bring 3 to 5 story ideas. When I worked for a daily newspaper, I wrote 10 to 14 stories a week. A lot of things that are going on. So they need content. And that's where you can help fill in with some of these positive stories. And this last point, if you provide newsworthy story ideas regularly, they will think of you as an ally. Yes. And they will think twice about burning you. And that's something I tried to reiterate earlier on when we were talking today, the importance of that relationship. If you look at today's news business and TV and radio, when I worked in radio, I was an anchor here for a local radio station here in Columbus. I had to do a newscast every 30 minutes. So a lot of fast-paced, changing things. They're always looking for new content. Same thing with TV. By gosh, I think the local news is on, I don't know, a lot these days. I know it starts early in some places and can go till 10. I know some stations now have a 7 p.m. The average radio newsroom has 3 employees. That is true. I left radio in 2013. The station I worked for, I started in 1998. We had 15 news reporters in the newsroom. When I left, we had 3. So very short-staffed. They really are depending on their sources to help them get things covered. And again, that's where if you have a good relationship, reporters are more likely to carry your positive messages to the community. I know this is a little bit of inside baseball, just to give you an idea, but your best chances for coverage, let's talk about some of these. Morning news, pitch live interviews to the shift producer. That would be somebody that I talked about you would be getting to know. In larger cities especially, they have hours to fill in these morning shows. So that's a good chance of getting some of these positive stories on the air because there's so much time in a morning show. And typically these morning show settings are more relaxed, more conversational. It's not hard news all the time, so to speak. Pre-plan lineup interviews, gather pictures. Like I said, have things ready for them. Give them ideas. Well, yeah, you guys can come down to the bus garage and I've got, oh, this would be a great shot here and for the school bus, or, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can help them out. Give them ideas. Help them do their story better. We iterated some of this stuff, a lot of time to fill, to pull these stories. Offer to call in for phone interviews. This is one thing that is even more important now on radio. In a newsroom when there's only 3 people, they don't have reporters that can go out in the field and maybe come to you. So this is where, you know, when I left, before I left radio, I was doing a lot of phone interviews. They're quick, they're easy to do, and can get done. So just to know that, that's one way. 2, don't be afraid to do the phone interview. And weekends and holidays in small newspapers. You want to talk about the best time to get, I mean, I've worked plenty of weekend shifts in the newsrooms. There's nothing going on. They're always looking for stories. So, and especially at these small newspapers now, and some of these communities that are really understaffed, I've seen a lot of these newspapers that are printing word for word a news release that you send to them. So think about that, about getting your message out. Think about some of your local newspapers in your some of these smaller dailies or weeklies. They're looking for anything to fill their pages or fill their online content. We went through some of this, include small newspapers, publications, radio, TV in neighboring cities and counties. Think about your media contact list. This is another thing that I wanted to stress is do kind of an inventory on who covers you, who's coming to the board meetings, which newspapers, which radio stations. Make that list, put that list together, and then find out their contact information, get phone numbers, and start meeting these people and who you're seeing maybe at the board meeting on a regular basis, who's covering the education.
Hey, Scott, there's a question in the chat box, and it's not specific to one particular slide, but I think it is specific to this whole notion of building the positive image. And the question is, doesn't the news media typically look for the negative or the juicy story because it sells? It's not very often that we see the positive in the media. And let me take a shot at answering this, and then I'm going to ask you to step in because that's your background. I think we see negative more than positive because we don't push enough of the positive stories. And I remember taught this course a couple times with a TV reporter, and Scott made the point a little bit earlier, and I want to come back to it, that morning news show that all the networks do is really long, and they're always struggling with content to fill that. So they don't have to say the same thing every hour on the hour. And there are going to be some newscasts in the day where I see you think where you may see more negative because what they're doing is reporting what happened. But that morning newscast, here in Columbus, all three networks are fighting for viewers on that, and they are looking for content. And if we give them the content, I think we've got a really good chance of getting it used there. So, Scott, do you think that's fair? Maybe 6 o'clock is going to be more what happened, whereas 5 a.m. may be the juicy stuff that we can push?
Yeah, and that would be an opportunity, like you mentioned, that morning show where you get, invite them down on the first day. I know it might be hectic, or, that whole positive safety message on the first day of school, where you can invite them to the bus garage if you prepare. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I know I'm not worked in a bus garage, so
Well,
you know,
I think that's a great solution, and I used to advocate for that when I worked for the department, and I still do now. Nobody knows what we do in a bus garage. Nobody knows what a bus driver does, and unless these folks have walked a mile or even a half a mile in our shoes, they won't have appreciation for it. So we've done this with legislators. Invite a legislator to come down and sit in the bus garage for the morning and watch what happens. Put them on a bus, let them ride along, and people will. I can see the chat lighting up now. Well, the law says we can't do that. Actually, what the law says is you can designate riders, but you cannot put unapproved people on a bus. I think there's nothing wrong with saying to a reporter, well, we have to do a background check, but would you like the opportunity to ride a route with one of our drivers and see what goes on? And let them get a taste for our world. Um, we started down this road really early in this presentation where Scott was telling us what the constraints are that reporters have. We need to let them know what the constraints are that we have, and that way we can meet each other at the same level. And I think it becomes a better playing field.
Pete, and when I started working at the association, I knew nothing until about, I'm like everybody else out there. I assume, oh, the yellow school bus shows up, picks up the kids, and leaves. And that's the extent that I knew of it. But as I've worked at the association and learned about what it takes to run an efficient, effective transportation department, it's amazing, and it's a good story to tell. It's a story that you should be telling your community.
And I will say to those of you on the call today that to be fair, I have treated Scott like a reporter, even though he's my peer at OSBA, because Scott manages all of our social media messaging, and he's also part of our public relations end of our staff. And so on behalf of the 600 school districts of transport here in the state of Ohio, I've said to Scott, here's what we do, and we've done spots and we've done all the little stuff that you'll talk about that we can push out, focusing on the positive. And so Scott, with his background as a reporter, has now learned our side of the business, and that helps him to manage the negatives in a positive light.
I wanted to wrap just a couple more slides about timing, and this has kind of fluctuated now with the way things are. Everything is instantaneous these days. I mean, with social media, like I said, a newspaper can put up a video online just as well and beat a TV station to a story. But timing is a lot. You have to know what time to send a release. Press releases are good. It's one way to get your information out. But I will tell you this, reporters are bombarded with millions, I wouldn't say millions. They're bombarded with many, many news releases throughout the day and throughout the week and throughout the month. And I can tell you from working in a newsroom, more than half get deleted. Don't even get looked at. So if you're going to send a release, I would be following up with a phone call to your contact at the news, either the newspaper. Hey, did you see this? And hey, I want to tell you more about this. Hey, I think this would be a great story, and here's why. But to get back on timing, a general rule of thumb for TV and radio is like 5 to 8 hours. Papers, again, this is changing though, because this has changed because of social media. But generally, the night before or a morning of the event is when you want to pitch. Pitch your story more than once if it's not time sensitive. It may be a really busy news day, a hard news day where they wouldn't have to get time to get to it. On a slow news day, your story may rise to the top of what they're going to cover because they have some open space for it. Some other things to think about, when thinking about when to pitch the story, releasing in the middle of the week. Weekend news crews are small, typically pursuing primarily breaking news or that story of the day on the weekend. Mondays are not good times to do this either because they have a pile of news to choose from the weekend. The shooting or murder that happened the night over the weekend, some of those follow-up stories, they like to do the follow-up. So, I would say your best shot nowadays of getting some of this are look for specific times like that first day of school, things like that, where it's going to be a talk about story and get it. Because see, the first day of school is a talk about story in the community. So the news departments are covering the first day of school, and this is a way to get positive information out about your transportation department. So that was just kind of some of this stuff has changed though with really it is a truly 24/7 news business where, when I started in radio back in the 90s, there was no internet. There was no Twitter and Facebook and things like that to get information out. So it truly was, we were kind of like social media and radio because we were doing newscasts every half an hour where people were waiting to read the newspaper the next day. And even the TV newscast was only, at 6 and 11. They didn't have these long morning shows back then. So Pete, that's all I have. I mean, if you want to go into those other scenarios.
Yeah. Why don't you release your share and let me flip my screen up on here.
I
think I just turned it off for you.
Thanks, Pete.
There it is. All right. So we focused on the reactive ones, and now I want to spin this on its ear and use the stuff in the last couple of slides that Scott's been sharing. And let me get my chat turned back on. Say, how can we do some positive outreach to the media? And so I've got 4 scenarios set up here. We'll talk through the first one, and then scenarios 2 and 3 we're going to do live. So the first scenario would be the school bus safety rodeo. And basically what happens is, your drivers have trained for however many weeks preparing for the regional school bus safety rodeo. And you can say one of our drivers or 2 of our drivers qualified for the state competition. The state competition will be hosted at the district's high school in 3 weeks. And so that's the scenario. Now, what you may want to do is create a press release and send it to Scott, or you may just want to reach out to him because you got a relationship with him. And this is the context of a phone call saying, Scott, would you like to come out here and we can do a public interest story and I can let you interview some of our drivers and talk about some of the things we're going. but this is something that many of you are involved in every year. And the question is, how can we take this and let the public know what we're doing and let them know that it's more than just a use of fuel that they have to spend tax dollars to pay for? Right? What are some of the positive messages that we want to make when we're selling this whole concept to Scott?
Can I ask Pete one thing before we?
Yep.
Can I ask the group too? What do you think, group, would be what news media outlets would be the best to reach out to with your key messages? Who would be more likely to pick this up? A newspaper, a TV station, or a radio station?
Local paper.
I'd say local paper too.
Why do you believe newspapers would be the best? I'm not
Normally, go ahead.
Well, I was saying newspaper, local newspaper, because it's in the area where you service the community, and it's more likely to get a response, as well as you're more likely to even have interest from the reporter, I believe, because it's local.
No, that's a good comment. When you think about this particular event, though, it's very visual, isn't it? Where a TV station would have an opportunity to take video of drivers actually competing. That would make for good video. But you're right, a newspaper nowadays also has video too, as well as photographs. So I can't say that a local paper would be good as well, but the TV factor here, they would love something like this because it's very visual.
Yeah, so this one, Scott, is probably going to be more local paper and TV than it would be radio. Is that fair?
That's fair, yes.
And Torrance, your point about local paper, and a number of you said this in the chat box, because if you give them an interview with a driver who happens to be a resident in your community, then that has the local appeal, the community appeal. But Scott's also right. This one has some TV grab to it. And because there's nothing that says education in Ohio like a picture of a school bus on the news, right? You either get a school bus or you get an apple, but it's usually a school bus. And so it's a great attention grabber, and that's what the news like. They like attention grabbers, isn't that right? So what are the positive messages? What are we trying to sell to folks here? How about our drivers are proud of their skills, and this is an opportunity for them to show them off. Is that reasonable? Somebody put in, this serves as continuing education. Agreed?
We could also say, Pete, they're part of the skills and training.
Yep. Drivers increase their skills when practicing. How about increase their skill level? Is that fair? Randy says we could offer to have a reporter come to the district's practice course and see it in action and maybe even drive one. That scares me, but I would let them ride one.
The driving thing would be great. I don't know how legal that would be. I could see a reporter wanting to do that, get behind the wheel of a school bus. I could see that as a good pitch, if that's possible.
I think it also gives insight to what we actually do when we're in a bus.
Yep. And this goes back to Scott's point about this has TV appeal. Think about that. An opportunity for the reporter to provide parents with a bird's eye view from the driver's seat.
This kind of reminds me, Pete, back in the day, railroad safety. I always got invited to ride on a train.
Yep.
To do that, and that was something that was very appealing, even with in radio, because you could get that sound and take the listener to the train.
Yeah. So here is the Achilles heel of this event. It happens on a specific day. And then once it's done, it's done. And I will tell you, and I had to learn this lesson the hard way when I spent 12 years working for the department, is that we would send out press releases every year before the regionals. We'd send them out before the state. And from our perspective, you then sit in your office for a week, hoping and praying that nothing else big happens. Because if it does, the reporter will get reassigned. So this is one of these things where you can do a press release, you can try to get them out ahead of time, but know that if Kellyanne Conway is in town doing an interview, the TV's not coming to see you because her smile is bigger, right? In which case, then you do the press release afterwards and you say, hey, Scott, you want to interview the driver that won this thing? And maybe we could even reset up part of the course so that you can ride along and they can show you what they did really well.
And if you're in the community where the driver who won, you've got a great story that your local news is going to pick up, in my opinion.
So let me toss this out to you. Why should we do this? Why should we take the time and the energy getting Scott for one of the big networks to come out with a camera crew and encourage him to do this? What's the value in it? Yep, good PR. What else?
Because one of the things is the negative is always out. We want to get more positive out of it if we can.
Yes, I think it's fair to say we're fighting for airtime, right? Because you know they're going to report if there's a bus crash. Let's build what we do that's good. So somebody said we're building community buy-in. Yep. Diane, you got it. This also, in spite of all the good that we do, not in spite of, in addition to all the good we do, helping the community know what we do, we're now building a relationship with the media and specific media reporters. We have given them something good that they can take to their editor. It makes people feel good. And maybe Scott's just done a great interview with your winning driver and with you, and we talk about the preparation, and something bad happens tomorrow. Scott's got a little bit more insight into what we do on our side of the game, and he's going to treat us a little bit, shall we say, more fairly and in a positive light when he reports on the bad thing that happened.
Very true. This I could see as a story that would play on the news. It's the term that in the news business is called the kicker. And in the news business, your last story is always positive and upbeat and puts a smile on everyone's face.
And so Alicia just threw something out here, and Alicia, kudos to you. She has bridged this article to say, we're going to use this to recruit more bus drivers.
Well, that's
So you could say,
Wow, that is a good one.
Do you want a chance to drive a bus between barrels and see how many you can miss as opposed to hitting? Here's your chance. Come join us.
No, that is a great one. Driver recruitment. Yeah.
All right, let's move to the next scenario. And this is National School Bus Safety Week. So the gist of it is that you and your district and your department will be hosting a school transportation open house for Safety Week next month. Here's the activities that you have planned. You're going to share a driver biography sheet to highlight the training, community involvement, and individual awards won by the drivers that work for your district. You're going to distribute posters that point out safety features on the new school buses. You're going to provide a summary of the transportation safety rules. You're going to provide buses that parents can get on and inspect. And perhaps you've been fortunate enough that you can borrow or you own one of the Buster the Bus robots so that you can do presentations with it. So that's the gist of what you have planned. When you call Scott and say, hey, will you come out here? Well, let's back this up. I like Scott's question before. What media outlets do you want to go for?
Paper and news. I mean, online.
What else?
TV.
All of them.
Yeah, is there anything you wouldn't want to hit? Would this be a great one? Scott, this is your bailiwick. Would this be a great one for social media?
Oh yeah, you can do a lot on social media, and we actually at OSBA during this week, I was hoping to maybe show a couple of those videos here at the end if I can get them to play over the Zoom.
Yeah.
That is something that we did, and I did some videos with Pete where we went out to a school bus garage here and shot videos him around a bus. We did some safety ones, and then for school bus, for just example, and I won't take up too much time, for school bus appreciation, school bus driver appreciation, which is in May, the video I sent out got like 5,000 views. So people loved it. I mean, they shared it, and it was just, and it was a video basically showing a driver and students, and there was some facts that were about school bus safety tied into the video. So it was a good thing for our districts, our members to share out, because it helped educate the public on, it was some of those, oh wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know they drove that many miles a year and things like that.
And just a couple of tips on video impact, whatever you do. A picture of a talking head does not have video impact. A picture of students getting on or off a school bus is a whole different ballgame. Or, traffic or buses at school with kids getting off the bus and into the building. Really think about the visual impact of what you want in the background. When Scott and I have done the safety messages, he has me stand in front of a school bus or on a school bus, so it's real clear what the message is about. And even if people aren't listening to the words, they see what's in the pictures. So what are the positive messages that we want to build on once that reporter's here? What's good about National School Bus Safety Week?
It brings awareness in the community and motorists to see us. We seem to be more visible afterwards.
Yep. What else? How about the opportunity to ask parents to be part of our safety efforts? And that could be reinforcing safe rider rules and motorist behavior. Ever try to type when everybody's watching? And motorist behavior around the school bus. What's another positive? Krista's got a good one. Enforces that school buses are the safest means to school. I think I spelled something wrong over there. All right. So let's do this as an interview. Who wants to volunteer to have been the person that called Scott and invited him out to talk about what your district is doing on National School Bus Safety Week? Randy Snyder, how about you?
Okay.
All right. There you go, Scott.
Wow, Pete, you're pretty persuasive. You just tell him you're doing it.
I asked and he agreed.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
gentlemen, I'll introduce the two of you to each other and say Randy's the supervisor, Scott's the reporter. Gentlemen, have your conversation.
There might be a lot of softball questions here, Pete. I don't know.
That's all right.
Hi. Can you state your name and your title with the district?
Yeah, my name is Randy Snyder, and it's spelled S-N-Y-D-E-R, last name. And I'm the transportation manager with Westerville City Schools in Franklin County.
Oh, okay. You got ahead of me then. You didn't have to see. That's good. You spelled your name right out of the gate. Tell me why this is an important week.
School Bus Safety Week gives us a National School Bus Safety Week, gives us an opportunity to showcase the true safety aspects of school transportation. School buses across the country are the safest form of transportation, period. Whether it be automobile, train, plane, boat, school buses are the safest form of transportation, and it gives our industry an opportunity to not only showcase that, but to proclaim how safe school buses are.
Well, how do you know they're the safest? Is there data out there that shows that?
Certainly, there is federal data, there is local data that shows whenever a school bus is involved in an incident, more students, more children walk away from incidents involving school buses than any other form of transportation. And it also gives us an opportunity to demonstrate and help the public understand what practices and what procedures we have in place to protect our students while they're on our school buses and also outside of our school buses.
You know, my kids, they ride the bus to school because my wife and I both work. So it's very important. It's very important transportation for us. I do know that there's no seatbelts on the bus. Why is that? I mean, I know some districts, I've seen some things across the country where, you know, some people think it's good. Some think, should there be seatbelts on school buses?
That's really a state at this point. The federal government hasn't taken that up. There have been some states that have taken that matter up. I'm pleased that in most cases it's left to be a local control issue, but construction standards to school buses, not only in the state of Ohio, but across the country, have remained relatively the same for the last several decades because the statistics show that school buses continue to be the safest form of transportation on a daily basis to and from school, getting our students access to their education.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about is red lights. Well, you know, I see this when I'm out that drivers just sometimes that a stop sign comes out and drivers just, you know, blow right by it. How big of a problem has this become?
That's a serious problem. Red light violations or stop arm violations, as some folks in the industry refer to it, is a serious issue. It has been reported in Ohio on some days there are thousands of potential red light violations happening each day. And that's why it's so important that our drivers receiving the training that they do to instruct our students how to safely and defensively cross the street whenever they're boarding or exiting a school bus. And our drivers are committed to the safety of their students as we are as an industry.
Thanks so much for your time. Is there anything you want to add? Anything I'm missing?
I'll just reaffirm, school buses are one of the safest, if not the safest, forms of transportation. And our drivers go through many hours of training, not only their first time getting behind the wheel of a school bus, but on a yearly and multiple year basis to maintain the safety of our students and our passengers.
So that last answer that you gave me, that first part of it, very short soundbite about the safest, I forget how you phrased it, is perfect. And that's going to be a soundbite in my story because it caught my ear as a reporter. It's short and it drives the point home of National School Bus Safety Week. And I got that from, is there anything else you want to add?
Great job, Randy. Comments, questions? So, you know what was really fun about this one, maybe fun's an abuse of that word, but because the district initiated this conversation, the district's in control. And you can take this conversation anywhere you want to and throw things out. And Scott had some questions that had nothing to do with National School Bus Safety Week, but it gave Randy the opportunity to respond to them and redirect them and take them a different way. And so I think for me, the key positive that he kept cycling back to was that school buses are the safest means to school. And that's a thumbs up. That's exactly what we want to do. One thing that's not in a slide, I just want to throw it out there for you. In an interview like this, if you want to have some information sheets, details, statistics, or resources available on paper and hand them to the reporter and say, here's some other places you can look if you want to do your own research to reinforce what I've said to you. One of the sites that I would encourage you all to take a look at yourself and then provide to the press when they come out is the American School Bus Council. Those of you that have not been to that website, and if you just put it in as a Google string, it'll come up. The American School Bus Council was founded in 2005. We did that while I was president of one of the national associations. It is a mixture of the State Directors Association, NAPT, and NSTA, which is the Contractors National Association. Those three national associations sponsor this site and pay for it. We have professional marketing staff that keep that site running. And there's all kinds of great information on there. There's press releases, there's detail sheets that you can give to the reporters. There's some national documents on there from NHTSA on there. So it's a great resource. Super job, Randy. Any other comments?
Pete, one thing I would make the reporters are good at doing too is, and that's why I tried to trip them up a little bit with that seatbelt question, because sometimes they'll sit in a newsroom and reporters will sit in a news meeting and see this release come across and they'll think, what can we ask about this? What else can we get out of this? And that's where these questions come up. That was when I was working in radio, I would be assigned to cover the mayor of Columbus or something, or the governor. Hey, the governor's having a gaggle. A gaggle is where the governor meets with all these reporters after. What questions? What can we get him on? What can we ask him? And I think that's where you as transportation supervisors could be open to getting some of those types. What else can they be asking me? And that's where you really need to think about that as well. They're not just going to be asking me about general questions about school bus safety. They could lock in on something, or they could go totally off the wall and ask me about something else that's going on in the district. So I think don't be prepared even for other things during some of these things that you've generated as news ideas, because they could trip you up. That's just the one thing I want to reiterate.
And if they hit you out of the blue with something, I think it's perfectly reasonable for you to say, you know, that merits its own in-depth conversation. How about we schedule that for next week or next decade?
And that's a great response though, Pete, because that stops them in their tracks and there's nothing they can do about it. They can't like use that on, they're not going to use that on the air, or you're not going to look bad by answering it that way.
And I will tell you that throughout my career, that's usually how I've handled the seatbelt question. And what I've said to the reporter is, well, you know, and Randy was right on target saying, you know, whether we have belts or not, the facts are that school bus is the safest vehicle out there and it's a great place for a child to be. But if you'd like to have that seatbelt question in depth, let's schedule another time and let's focus on just that. All right, let's do one more of these. Another proactive scenario, and this one's a little bit different. It truly is a public interest story. One of your bus drivers was on their route, stopped at a bad accident, and rescued someone from a burning car. Now, as supervisors, you and I are thinking, okay, the bus driver's not allowed to leave the bus with kids on board and all the other stuff. Just forget that. Wipe it out of your mind for a moment. Here's a driver that did a really good thing. So your driver rescued somebody out of a burning car. She made a radio call to you for a call to 911 and then stopped her bus to see if she could help. One of the passengers in the car was unconscious. Your bus driver pulled her out of the car moments before the car caught fire. All right. So what media outlets should we reach out to? Yep. Local and community papers.
TV, definitely.
What else?
Yeah, the tug at your strings kind of heartstrings type of story.
Yep, Glenna, social media. You know, Bob, you asked earlier, how come we never see the positives on the 6 o'clock news? And I think that's because what they put on the 6 o'clock news are the events that happen. Here's an event that happened that is a positive. And this, I could see this playing at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and again at 10 and 11, couldn't you, Scott?
Oh, definitely. This is one that, I mean, it's a great story. So yeah, this is not something that they're going to bury in the morning news or on a weekend.
Randy's got a good point there. How about the school paper? And that could include PTA bulletins. So there's some other answers coming in on a chat box. In addition to media outlets, who else should you reach out to with something like this? How about ODE? I would tell you to reach out to us. At OSBA, we'd be thrilled to partner with you in turning this into a splash. And we have the resources to go statewide on something like this. Anybody want to tell their school board about it?
That's a situation where the school board would be able to even present an award.
Yep.
To the driver.
So what are the positives? What are the positive messages that we're trying to convey by telling this story? Yep, our drivers care about the community. School buses have quick access to radio for help. Oh, that's a really good one. Our school buses are a great community communication resource. What else? Tracy, you're asking if their students are on the bus or not. And because I make up these scenarios, you can put them on or put them or not put them on. For our purposes here, we're going to pretend there's no students on the bus. That way we don't have to worry about keeping them safe. Yep. Drivers are trained in first aid. So, and I really like that last point that was just made. Angie, right on target. Thank you. School bus drivers are the eyes and ears of the community. We see the entire district. Some of you have been through the school bus watch program that I've taught here in the state. I helped write that a bunch of years ago. And that the whole premise of that program, and we worked with the FBI, TSA, and the other federal agencies, is that school bus drivers really do see the community, and they really are the eyes of the community, which puts them in a great place to get help to where help is needed. All right, who would like to have a hero bus driver and invite Scott to come in to talk about this?
It's going to be tough, Pete. I don't know if I can think up any trip up questions here.
Well, you might just have to be nice to him, Scott.
No.
Hey, Neil Bennett, what do you think? Want to try this one on?
Sure, I'll give it a try.
There you go, Scott. Scott, meet Neil. Neil, meet Scott. Neil's another one of our new supervisors. So be nice to him, nasty reporter.
So, Neil, just for purposes of, so I don't mess up your name and title, can you please tell me your name and spell it? And what is your title with the district?
My name is Neil Bennett, Neilbennett, and I am the Transportation Supervisor for Buckeye Local School District in Ashtabula, Ohio.
So, Neil, this is a pretty extraordinary story. Just first, tell me what happened. What played out with this driver?
Yes, sir, it is a very unique story. Our driver saw an accident. She pulled over her bus and she ended up possibly saving somebody's life.
What did she do?
She pulled someone from a burning car, sir.
Did she talk about, have you talked to her since the accident? Can you kind of describe anything that she told you about it, or?
She was shaken up a little bit about it, but she was very happy to have helped. Bus drivers do care a lot about their students and people of the community.
So in terms of, is there anything the district's doing for the driver right now?
We're working on some accolades for her, but nothing currently.
Is she still on the job?
Yes, sir.
Is the district plan any type of an award for this driver, or is that maybe still in the works, or you know at this point?
I'm not sure at this point, but we have let the local school board know, the OSBA, the ODE, and every outlet we could think of to recognize her for what she's done.
Neil, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, sir. I just want to add that school bus drivers are real caring individuals, and they are trained in first aid and emergency procedures, and they do a tremendous job day in and day out.
Good job. All right, so now the pressure's off. Want to do anything
Yeah, I was a
differently?
bit nervous.
Want to do anything differently?
Yeah, I would probably go into greater detail. I was put on the spot, so I was a bit nervous. So I was kind of short to the point. Yes, sir. Answers.
And that's okay. That's why we practice these things. Practice makes you more comfortable. Here's some things that I would think about. You know, maybe maybe the superintendent and the board have been a little bit slow to respond to your communications. And maybe what you could say to the reporter is, you know, I think there's a possibility that we're going to recognize this driver at a board meeting. Would you like us to invite you to that meeting?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
And you know what Scott's going to say, and you also know what your superintendent's going to say when you tell him, right?
Yes, sir.
You know, Pete, I will say that the first thing, they're going to want to talk to the transportation administrator, but the real person the media is going to want to talk to in this story is the driver.
Yep.
If they can't talk to the driver, I don't know how much of a story it's going to be. So I just want to reiterate that it's a great story. And then it comes in the question of, does the driver really want to talk about it?
Yeah, and so, you know, here's the thing where as a supervisor, we have to be sensitive to the needs of our drivers. And if Scott were to say to you, Neil, or if it's me or anybody, can I meet with this driver? Can I interview them? I think the answer to Scott is, you know, I think that would be really nice. Let me talk to the driver and see if she or he is comfortable with that. And are there some times that I can give her and we could set that up? And that might even be a conversation that you have before Scott even shows up. Maybe this is the phone call where you're telling him about it. And then you're setting up the follow-ups that would happen after that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Or that would be the hook is, hey, the driver can talk, or maybe you know at that point that you are going to give the driver an award and she's going to be at the school board meeting. You're going to get a lot of press to come to that.
Good job, Neil. Thank you.